Hi everyone, my name is Busari Abiodun. Welcome to my channel. In this video, I'm going to discuss about the correction of errors in a trial balance. What is a trial balance? A trial balance is the sum of all the debit and credit balances in the ledger, including the cash book. If you remember, under the ledger, at the end of the period, we are going to balance the ledger. So the ledger that is having a debit balance will be transferred to the debit side of the trial balance. The ledger that is having a credit balance will be transferred to the credit side of the trial balance. And at the end of the day, we expect the total of the debit side of the trial balance and the total of the credit side of the trial balance to be equal. Let's take a look at a sample of a trial balance. So from the sample that appear on the screen, you can see the sales is having 25,000, which means at the end of the period, the total of the sale, the total balance of the sales is 25,000. The total balance of the purchases is a debit balance, which is 9,500. Same thing with cash, which has a debit balance of 6,000. Debtors, debit balance of 5,000. Creditors, credit balance of 3,500 naira, and so on. Which means if we had the debit side together, the total will be 28,500. If you had the credit side together, the total will be 28,500. That is what is expected of a trial balance. The total of these two sides are expected to be equal. But in the situation whereby the total of the debit side of the trial balance is not equal to the total of the credit side of a trial balance, that means there is an error in the trial balance. Also, even if the total of the debit side of a trial balance equals to the total of the credit side of a trial balance, does that mean that we do not have error in the trial balance? So that will take us to the types of errors in a trial balance. Types of errors in the trial balance. The errors in a trial balance can be categorized into two. The first one is errors that do not affect the agreement of a trial balance. The second one is errors that affect the agreement of a trial balance. So we are going to start with the first one, which are the errors that do not affect the agreement of a trial balance. So the errors that do not affect the agreement of a trial balance can be categorized into 6, which are error of omission, error of commission, error of principle, error of originality, compensating error, complete reversal of entry. So we will be taking these errors one after the other, and we will be considering an example under each of the errors. Error of omission. This occurs when entry is completely omitted from the book. Most times it usually occurs from the source document when the bookkeeper fails to capture an entry right from the source document. We all know what source document is. They comprises of the receipt, invoice, debit note, and the like. So when a bookkeeper maybe mistakenly did not capture one of the entries from the source document, that means such entry will not appear at all in the book of account. Such an error is termed error of omission. Let's take an example under error of omission and how we treat it. Cash sales of 5,000 to Abiodun were completely omitted from the book. So if we look at this, the first thing we do is to identify the two accounts. So we have cash and we have sales. So we have cash account and the sales account. We are selling, that means we are receiving money, the cash is receiving, we are going to debit the cash account while we credit the sales account. So the treatment will be debit cash account, credit sales account. Let us look at the journal entry. The journal entry will be debit cash 5,000 naira, credit sales 5,000 naira, being error of omission corrected. The next error of commission. This occurs when entries is made in wrong person's account. Like we know, just like we talk about the various class of account, we have personal account, impersonal account. The personal account are meant for the debtors and the creditors. So in a situation whereby two names seems to be similar, Mr. A purchased an item from us on credit, but by the time we want to enter, we enter it in the book of Mr. B account. So such an error is called error of commission, error that has to do with name, do with persons. Let's take an example of error of commission. credit sales of 2,000 naira to Adeola was recorded to Adetola account. Adeola is the one owing us, but we mistakenly enter it into the Adetola account. How are we going to correct this? The correction is that we are going to remove the money back from Adetola account because he is not the debtor, and put the money back to the right, enter it in the right person's account, which is Adeola account. That is, we credit Adetola account, then we debit Adeola account with 2,000 naira. Let's look at the journal entry. The journal entry will be debit Adeola account 2,000 naira, credit Adetola account 2,000 naira. Being error of commission corrected. Let's look at the next error. Error of principle. This error occurs when entry is made in wrong class of account. Just like I said, we have personal account, impersonal account. Under the impersonal account, we have real account. Real account is meant for assets. We have nominal account. Nominal account is meant for income and expenses. A situation whereby entry that's supposed to be in an asset account is enter in a nominal account, which is expenses account. That is an example of error of principle. Let's take an example under that. Purchase of machinery 10,000 naira was entered into purchase account. Machinery is an asset. Purchases is an expenses. Machinery belongs to the real account. Purchases belongs to the nominal account. They are two different classes of account. Then how do we correct that? That means we are going to remove the money from purchases account and enter the money back into the machinery account. That is, we credit purchases account, we debit machinery account. That is the treatment. Let us look at the journal entry. So that means we debit machinery account 10,000 naira, we credit purchases account 10,000 naira. Being error of principle corrected. Compensating error. This error occurs when an error made in an account is cancelled by an error made in another account. For example, we make a mistake, maybe we overstate Mr. A account with 100 naira. We now understate Mr. B account with 100 naira. We will see that instead of having shortage of 100 naira, Mr. A excess of 100 naira will cover up for Mr. B shortage that we are having. Let's take an example under the compensating error. In calculating the rent account of Bush Limited, the total was mistakenly calculated as 2,500 instead of 2,050 naira. Take note of that. That means there is an excess of how much? 450 naira. So let's go further. Coincidentally, the account of furniture and fitting was wrongly calculated as 9,550 naira instead of 10,000 naira. If we look at that, we are having shortage of how much? 450 naira. So which means the account of rent has been overstated with 450 naira. So which means our trial balance is likely to have excess of 450 naira, but coincidentally the account of furniture and fitting was understated with the same amount, which means the excess of rent account will cover up for the shortage of furniture and fitting account. In that case, in this situation, a suspense account we are going to use to correct it, which means the rent account which we have excess of 250 naira, we will remove the 250 naira using suspense account. That is, we credit the rent account with 250 naira. So the corresponding debit entry will now go to the suspense account. That's the treatment for the rent account. For the furniture and fitting account, where we have the shortage, that means we are going to add the money back. That means we are going to add 450 naira back to the furniture and fitting account by debiting the furniture and fitting account and crediting the suspense account to complete the double entry for that one. Let us look at the journal entry for it. That is, the rent account will be credited to remove 450 naira from the rent account, while the corresponding debit entry will now go to the suspense account. So for the furniture and fitting, that means the furniture and fitting will be debited with 450 naira to complete the amount, to make up for the shortage, while the corresponding credit entry will go to suspense account. So being errors in the values corrected. So error of originality. In the case of error of originality, this error occur when error is made from the book of original entries. It means the mistake has been raised by the bookkeeper when he is entering the value in the book of original entry. What are the book of original entry? That is book of prime entry or the day book. Those are the books we call the book of original entry, or journal. When there is no day book, journal becomes the book of original entry. For more information about that one, you can check my video on book of original entry or book of prime entry. You have clear understanding of what this is. So in that case, that means if error is made from book of original entry, that amount will be transferred to the ledger like that, and at the end of the day, it will not affect the trial balance. Let's take an example under that. Purchase of machinery 55,800 was mistakenly entered in the cash book as 55,000 naira. If we remember, under the book of original entry, cash book is also one of them. Just like we have the sales day book, purchase day book, return in one day book, return outward day book, we have the cash book. So if mistake the shortage of 800 naira in the cash book, that means it will be transferred to the ledger like that. How do we correct that? The correction is that we should add back the 800 naira that is short in the amount by debiting the machinery account with 800 naira and crediting the cash account with 800 naira. Let us look at the journal entry. Debit machinery 800 naira, credit cash 800 naira, being error on the amount of machinery corrected. So lastly, the complete reversal of entry. Under the complete reversal of entry, the original amount is used. The mistake is not from the amount, but it has to do with the posting, the side in which the entry is being posted. So a situation whereby an entry is posted on the wrong side of the account, entry that's supposed to be debited is credited, and the double entry principle is completed under that with that method. So that error is called error complete reversal of entry, because to treat that, that means we are going to reverse it entirely. Let's take an example under that. Payment of salary 12,000 was debited to cash account and credited to salary account. So pay attention to this one. Payment of salary is an expenses, which means salary account supposed to be debited, but was credited to salary account. So how do we treat this? That means the first thing, we remove the money from the salary account, then we now add from the credit side, then we now add it to the debit side of the salary account. Initially, the salary account had been credited with 12,000 naira. So to correct that, that means we are going to debit it with 12,000 naira. If we debit it with 12,000 naira, that means we close the account. To now enter the amount back in the salary account, that means we add another 12,000 naira to the debit side of the salary account, making 24,000 naira. Which means in the case of complete reversal of entry, we are going to double the figure, which means we are going to debit salary account with 24,000 naira, and the corresponding entry will also go to the what? The cash account, which is 24,000 naira. So the correction will be credit cash with 24,000 naira and debit salary account with 24,000 naira, which means from that 24,000 naira, the 12,000 naira that was initially recorded at the wrong side, if we remove it, it will remain 12,000 naira at the balance. That is all about the errors that do not affect the agreement of a trial balance. That is, all these errors, when they occur, the total of the trial balance will be equal, yet there are errors in the trial balance, and these are the various errors that may occur, and this is how we can correct